Welcome to Jefferson Liberty Radio, the voice of the state of Jefferson in the Central Valley. I'm Matthew. Alan is actually out this week. He's not feeling well, so be praying for him. He's, I think, affected by the smoke, and be also praying for the fires going on in California. So many people affected. So, but we have a special guest today. We have Marie sitting in with us. Marie, can you tell us about our next event?
Hi, Matthew. Hi, Pat. Yes, our next event is December 5th at Grizzly Rock Cafe at 6:30, and we're going to be discussing how we move forward in Stanislaus County and where you fit in, and about our great events that will be coming up in 2019.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This episode is sponsored by AL Certified Safe and Lock. AL's offers locksmithing services and alarm systems for a range of applications, including burglary, fire, tamper, medical emergencies, and much more. AL's has been locally owned and managed in Modesto for nearly 70 years, and with thousands of loyal and satisfied customers, you can be sure AL's will meet and exceed your needs. For more information, call 1-800-700-4780 or go to alsalarm.com. That's ALSALARM.com. Thank you so much to AL Certified Safe and Lock for sponsoring our show. Well, Pat, you're sitting in as host for Alan, so let's take it away.
Welcome again, Kevin Fox, to our Jefferson Liberty Radio podcast. Our first, by the way, I do have a gun to my head. I am being forced into doing this podcast again, so I just want to let everyone know that I am way out of my comfort zone.
Pat,
that's
you
for
were
sure.
Doing an amazing job.
Little things, but anyway, Anyway, my heart's not telling me that. Anyway, we'll see. So our first podcast was with Kevin. We spoke a lot about his politics, about his life, how he got into.
Well, your last podcast, right? Because this is not the first one.
Did I say last? Did I say first?
You said your first podcast. Oh. We're having fun now. So
wait a minute. Yeah. Okay.
I was here like a week ago.
The previous podcast. How does that? That's much better. Don't you think? Okay. The previous podcast, we spoke about how Kevin got into radio, how his politics, what he thought about local politics, what's going to happen in future politics. He looked into his crystal ball, and he told us. Yes, that was good.
The quatrains.
So, this podcast, though, we want to get into the state of Jefferson. And we'd like to ask you, Kevin, this time, what do you see with the state of Jefferson? How do you feel about the state of Jefferson?
I have always loved the idea of the state of Jefferson. I really have. Early on, of course, I'm a bit of a historian, so I've looked into the history. I don't know it as intimately as some SOJ folks, but I've looked into the history, and I love the idea that this small little part of this beautiful state of California, which I love so much, said, hey, screw you guys. We do things differently up here. And then they began this movement to garner more representation in order to facilitate their own political intent. So I've always loved the idea of the state of Jefferson. I think, and I have stated this many, many times, early on when the movement began to be taken seriously and wasn't a tourist attraction, okay, that those founders, current, shouldn't say founders, because that goes back to like, what, 47 or so.
41.
Very early.
Oh, way before that.
So those folks that were bringing the message, spreading the message, were correct. That's number one. I'm holding up my finger. They were correct, and I agreed with everything they said. However, most folks didn't understand much of what they were saying once they got past, the whole liberty, and yes, you get to keep your guns, and yes, you're going to get more represented. After that, once you started explaining the actual legal process that goes along with the state of Jefferson, you lost folks. And I think that's always been the Achilles heel of the movement. But I love the idea, in short, and I think I've always been a supporter of the idea and the concept
of liberty. And yes,
If you don't support liberty, I think there's other countries you could go live in.
Yeah.
But
yes, there are many other countries that you do not have your liberty. And that
Venezuela comes to mind.
Venezuela was in with his. That's what I had in mind as well. So, well, I don't come. Where do I go from here then? So you like the idea of the state of Jefferson?
Well, what do you think What do you think our chances are of Jefferson becoming a reality?
Slim to none.
Why is that?
Why?
I think the cards are stacked against you. I think just like we've seen in recent elections, it will not be allowed to happen. We all know that state of Jefferson is about more representation. I think that that's something they fear. Giving you,
More.
Marie, you, Pat, you, Matt, giving you a legitimate someone to say, hey, the folks that I represent disagree with you. I don't think you're going to, I don't think that those in power now, right? Because that's what it becomes, a power struggle. I don't think those folks are willing to give that up, because look at what we're talking. We've always had a fight about redistricting. When you're talking about redistricting a congressional district and the fights that go into that, you're talking about ultimately redistricting a state, right? Into its own state. Right? Ultimately.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So honestly, slim to none. But I don't believe that anyone should give up that fight. I really don't. I think you should continue fighting, and I'll fight with you. But there's some realities to it, because I think every time somebody hears the message, right, sees those double X's on that gold medallion, it brings to mind that they can also have more and better, or at least the representation they deserve, right?
Yes.
So I think it's a message of fairness that I agree with. I think it's a message of liberty, and also I think it's a message of independence from the status quo, which ultimately is why I truly, honestly believe that if it ever happens, it will be a hell of a fight to get there.
It will be.
And we are fighting. We're not going to give up.
No.
They're not either. That's the problem. That's the thing. Is there's
and they
not just in the sense of physical real estate, right? The eastern part of the state is ultimately what we're talking about. The northeastern and eastern part of the state. Now, you guys have fought so hard. Finally, we got SOJ 51, and finally Stanislaus County is part of this movement. And it's spreading further south.
It is
in the state of California, and they're not willing to give away the physical real estate. They're not willing to give away the political capital as well. Those votes may be ignored very often, right?
Yes, they are.
I think a week ago, last podcast, we talked about the tax repeal, and we talked about the colors on the map and how the Bay Area and LA and that coastal region in central and northern and southern California is what ultimately rejected the gas tax repeal. They know that there's still voting capital out here and political real estate out here, and they're not willing to turn loose of it. And if to get it done, you're going to have to take it, and that could get ugly.
I can see your point of view. I do know that. Are you saying that that the majority of the people would not be in those areas, would not be for it? So thus the reason we're going to have this trouble, because you do know that we're in the courts, right? We're in the federal court,
which I've always agreed is the right way to do it.
Article 4, Section 3.
But I don't think that in the state of California, it's going to change anything. I mean, look who you're up against. Xavier Becerra ignores everything. Has he even responded to the lawsuit?
No.
See? My point exactly.
And it's federal court. We're not even in state court. We're in federal court. So, it's a whole different ball game, but yet the judge isn't even willing.
But until the federal judge doesn't want to ignore it. But until you got that, we were fighting with the Attorney General State of California, Xavier Becerra, and everything got ignored. Everything, he dismissed it all. It's frivolous. These people are crazy. I'm sure you've heard all this.
Even
before,
the legislators.
Right?
I mean, for 4 years, they fought the legislature.
Sure.
They wouldn't even listen. I mean, one lady wrote and called like 4,000 times. I mean, over and over and over again. I even went up with them, and we weren't even in the game then. But they were friends of mine. So I went up because a lot of us just figured we'll just move, Yeah. And that's why we filed the lawsuit, to get them to listen to us.
And I think that was effective. I've always thought the legal route was the way to do it. But honestly, I don't think in the end, even if laws are upheld, right, by the courts, I don't think the legislators, have any intent on complying with those things. We've seen that all before, and I just think that there's too much at stake to turn loose of it, which is a good thing. I don't want to sound all doom and gloomy. If you've got that kind of power over them that they just plan on out of spite ignoring a federal judge's orders, right? You've got a lot to hang your hat on that. Right?
That's true.
We do. Well, we still need some support somehow. I mean, we would love to find someone to really give us some support somewhere. And I hear exactly what you're saying, because we have heard all of this before. Sure. We're not going to give up, but in the federal courts, we are climbing a very tall hill here.
Few people know how the law works.
Yes,
that's
true.
I think that's part of the battle. And and again, I'm not at all saying don't support the state of Jefferson, because I do. I love the idea. I totally support what State of Jefferson do. When I was on the radio, periodically, I would say, hey, it's Wear It Wednesday, or it's Fly It Friday, and I would say, hey, they're out. And sometimes Marie would call in and let us know where they were, and I would say, go talk to those people, because I think it's a one-on-one conversation about what's in the literature. What's in the message, the marketing message of what State of Jefferson stands for, so that people can identify with the core values and the core message that the State of Jefferson stands for. And I think once you get to that point in the conversation on a one-on-one, people get it.
Yes, they do.
But if they see trucks going down a Central Valley Road with the green flag and the 2 X's on the gold medallion, they don't know what that means. They don't know. I've seen it flying when I'm on a sailboat out in the Delta. I've seen it flying up on RVs. So I know it's resonating with some folks, and those folks are your biggest evangelists. But it takes a one-on-one sit down and dissect this very complicated legal matter that most folks are too busy in their own lives to comprehend. Does that make sense?
Right? Yeah, it is. With the recent election, do you see the need for Jefferson, especially in our county? What do you?
I don't think it has. I don't think there's a timeline for it. So when you say recent election, I can see where we've had some struggles where we perceive now, because of who won the most recent election, we may not get the representation we feel we need, right? But in politics, the very slim majority, very slim, like half a point, right? Won, right?
Yeah.
So there's some realities to that. So I don't think it has anything to do with the timeline. Again, I go back to, I think there's always been, not just in California, but in many places across the United States of America, that there's a need for the state of Jefferson, the concept of the state of Jefferson.
Well, liberty.
Yes.
Eastern Washington has liberty. Illinois now has Lincoln. So it's spreading. Yeah, all these splits are coming about. I was going to say, so I went to Pleasanton for a car show. And as we're driving down the road, I'm like, what the heck? There's a Jefferson sign and a flag in Pleasanton. And I'm like, they're not even included, but yet you see it over there.
I would like to think that the person that lives in that house ran into somebody on a Fly It Friday or a Wear It Wednesday and said, "Hey, what's this all about?"
That's exactly what happened.
Yep.
And I tell you, I'll go back to when I first kind of was exposed. I knew a little bit about the history, but it was a tourist attraction, right? In my mind, it was like those silly folks up in Northern California, they did this thing and they got cars to stop and then they sold some soft drinks and some gasoline at the store. And, and folks walked away going, hey, those guys are nuts, right? Gun toting and they want to be, come on, right? But that's the way it was perceived in the media, that this is such a ludicrous idea that those people must be crazy. But these folks now in Pleasanton, as you mentioned, Maureen, not included in the movement, geographically, right, had a conversation with somebody and got to the bottom line, which is liberty. Look, there are certain things that are inalienable given to us by God that the government cannot give us, cannot take away. They think they can. And they think they can make laws because that's what they are. Legislators are lawmakers, right? So they think that they can make the law but not have to follow it.
Law followers. They are lawmakers.
Exactly. So which is why you're getting ignored. I feel you're getting ignored even by a federal judge, right?
Yes.
That just keeps pushing this off his docket, keeps pushing it away, right?
Yes.
Because they know, I feel like they know if he took on that case, he'd have to make a judgment. And that judgment will likely not fall in the folks that he wants to, what's the word I want to use, the
rule?
Be an activist for?
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
True.
Yeah. Activist judges. Right. And I think that's the reason you're not getting much attention judicially, because they know what's right. They read the law. They don't want to follow it.
The Judge Mueller stipulated, we have it on record where she stated that we have a case, that our case isn't frivolous, that we have merit. She stated, and so did the state's attorney, and yet they're completely ignoring the fact that they stated this.
Well, I think they're clear on the fact that they've stated it because they've made the statement. I think that they don't want to deal with the case because they already know how they have to rule. Yeah. And which means that you're not crazy. Those folks that are flying it on Friday or wearing it on Wednesday or having conversations in coffee shops that leads to people outside this movement geographically, like places like Pleasanton, California, which is largely liberal and progressive, right?
Yes.
Those people are now evangelizing your message of liberty and justice for all people.
All people, not some. That's true. That's a big one there. That we want liberty and justice for all people, not just some. Now let me just go back one more thing, because I don't know if you know this. Do you know that who we have representing us as far as legal counsel go? Do you know? We do have a judge, a judge who was on the Ninth Circuit. He was Kaczynski. His name is Alex Kaczynski, isn't it?
Yes.
Alex Kaczynski. Yeah, he was on the Ninth Circuit, and he was
Kavanaugh.
Judge Kavanaugh clerked under him.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? So we'll. He thinks we have some. We might be able to go somewhere, but we'll see. I understand. We understand you're reticent to think that this is going to go anywhere, and I kind of.
Well, we get that because we see how long have we been going?
A year and a half.
Year and a half. We see people come in and they're like, "Gosh, this is taking forever. This is a lot of work," and they dive out. Mm-hmm. So we see that. But
we know,
we're not going to give up hope. We can't.
Look, I don't want anybody to give up hope, and again, I'm not a doom and
no,
gloom
you're
guy,
not.
Right? Okay, but I want to speak the truth, and you asked me, and
yes,
I'm going to give you
how
I feel about it raw, and there's some realities, and if we don't face that reality, if we pull the if we put on those rosy glasses, right, and we keep looking at this thing like we're right and we're going to win. I mean, we thought that about this most recent election, right? Everybody thought we got this in the bag. right? We got this. Look at all the conservatives. We see them all on Facebook, right? Because they're all our friends and we're all connected. And it's the only message we're hearing, right? And so I'm not trying to put on the rosy glasses. I'm trying to be real about this, that they don't, when I say they, I mean the progressives that are in control. They don't want this to pass because they got to give up some political capital.
I think there's even Republicans that don't want to give it up.
Oh, of course.
You know, and we see that in this county. Hook, line, and sinker.
Sure. There are Republicans in this county, when they see Marie, they turn the other way and they run, or they go, oh my God.
No.
Right? Because they know they know what they're going to get hit with. They're going to get hit with raw, real, this is how I feel, and you're going to stand here until I express how I feel because you're an elected official. I think we all have that right. Right? Yes. We all have that privilege. We elected those people. After all, they are part of we the people, who is the government, right? So if we elected them, you're damn right you're going to stand there. You're going to take every bit of Marie's fury until she's done, and then we're going to walk away amicably, and we're going to be friends. You have that relationship with many people who represent us here in this county. Am I wrong?
I don't know about that lately.
Well, they have found a way to get away from her. Many of them don't just stand there and listen. So unfortunately they should, but they don't. No. And that's really the sad.
Marie's
learning
the rules to the game, though.
She's learning the rules. We're all learning.
I'm not playing by them, so listen up.
This is all a learning. We're all on a learning curve here. That's for sure. So, Kevin, let's just change the subject. Well, thank you for your information or your insight on how you feel about the state of Jefferson. I appreciate them.
I have a State of Jefferson flag.
Yes, and Kevin did sign our support statement.
Yes.
After I twisted his arm 5 or 6 times. But,
good.
you know.
I don't know if it was a twist. You pulled a little bit, but...
Just kidding, you guys.
It didn't. I don't think it was that difficult.
No.
I'm sure he does love liberty as much as we do. So let me just change the subject here just a little bit. Do you see yourself getting back on the radio, Kevin?
Not right now.
Okay.
Not right now.
Okay. Well, you and Alan have a little bit of a joke, I guess, that someday you should have a syndicated station and getting a new radio station. Does that intrigue you? Do you remember that?
Yeah, when I was on the radio, and I'm not the kind of person to dwell on the past because I can't control what has already happened. Right. Some days I miss it, mostly because I'm a news junkie, and when things pop up, then I get I've got something to say about this,
Yes.
And can I give you an example of that?
Please.
Yes.
Oh, please do.
So, most recently, a veteran walked into a bar, and this is not a joke, all right? It's not how a joke starts. A veteran walks into a bar, and he commits a mass shooting, and he kills a whole bunch of people. That was in the news cycle, and I'm frustrated about this because it was very near Veterans Day, and it was in the news cycle for a day and a half when school shootings consumed the news cycle, mass shooting, less people were shot, right? And it consumed the news cycle for a month. We talked about it every day on the radio. But a veteran suffering PTSD on the eve of Veterans Day, when we honor those that have fought and died for this country, walks into a bar, kills people, and nobody wants to talk about it. They don't even want to talk about the gun issue.
No.
Right? And I'm frustrated by that because I could have went on the radio and I could have given you solid 4 hours about how nobody in the news is talking about PTSD.
Yeah,
nobody in the news
true.
is talking about what our soldiers are suffering on a mass scale, which was the cause for that shooting. It wasn't the gun. It wasn't the people in the bar. It was this guy was not given what he was promised.
That's right.
He was promised that the VA, he was going to have the VA had his back after his service. Now, I don't know his full backstory, and I certainly don't dismiss what he did, okay, because it was immoral, it was criminal, it was savage. But I think everybody missed the bigger part of that conversation. Yes. It was a huge opportunity for us as a nation to go, my God, what is happening to our veterans? Why? Yeah. Why didn't we see this in World War II? Why didn't we see it during the Korean War? Why didn't we see this as prevalently during Vietnam? Why is it just these soldiers that are returning from the Middle East, Iran, Iraq, and those theaters of war that are suffering? What are they seeing over there that is pushing them over the edge? And that's the conversation I wanted to have. And I could have done a solid 4 hours on that.
Oh.
Well, and I think the past vets suffered it too. It was maybe just not known. I don't know.
Those are excellent questions. And something I had not thought about that, Kevin. I do know that there's always been PTSD. I think when I was a kid, I think they called it shell shock.
Yes.
But now it's PTSD. And why is it so prevalent today? What is putting them over the top?
Well, why
what
is
are
it?
they seeing? Those are really good questions.
I think
it is.
the topic beckons even more questions. I think that there's a lot of searching that needs to go on about what is happening. I'm the president of American Veterans First, all right? The board president. I work with Duke Cooper, and he does most of the work. I'll be perfectly honest, right? He does most of the work. He's a Marine, so he's our grunt on the ground. He pretty much runs. You are
the president? Is that
I'm the board president. Reluctantly, they elected me, but mostly because I'm a little better organized than, in a business sense, to run the board than they do, or than they had currently. So, my point being is with that organization, we see a lot of veterans in a variance of times of service, right? We're dealing with some Korean War vets, right? There's hardly any World War II around. Right. Yeah. So we're dealing with some Korean War vets who are aging and they have a specific need. We're dealing with Vietnam era vets who have very specific needs, and some of those needs have been identified with what happened to them specifically in that theater of war. Okay. Things like Agent Orange and some shell shock, that sort of thing. And I think shell shock, I would describe that differently, just by what I know. I would describe that differently, similar, but slightly differently than what we're seeing with PTSD.
Okay.
There has to be, and I don't want to get all conspiracy theory, but there has to be some component missing from those past wars. Whether that's training, and I'm certainly not suggesting that the military adjust their training, but I think that we should always be examining that. I don't think we need to get any softer with our soldiers, right? We don't need to coddle them. Oh, my God, we're sending them off to kill people for our own protection.
Right.
But I think from my experience, those guys that I have had the opportunity to talk to who are returning from Afghanistan, who are returning from Desert Storm, Operation Enduring Freedom, and what we're seeing now. Have experienced war like none of us have ever seen in the past. I mean, really gruesome and ugly things on a regular basis that they've had to live with and harbor. And those are the conversations that I wish sometimes I still had a microphone that I could talk about.
Well, do you see also, I mean, I've heard also that we have more vets committing suicide than we have ever had before. So it makes you wonder like you said, what they're seeing, what's going on. Do
you have an idea, Kevin?
Here's what I've come to know in my experience, and mostly with American Veterans First, I run a program that we operate. It's called Sail to Recovery. Okay. I'm passionate about sailing, right? Yes. So I have discovered in my own personal therapy that sailing is a way to escape your mind from all kinds of things. When you're out there on a boat and the motor's not running and you're under the power of the wind, you must concentrate on exactly what you're doing almost all the time. If you're sailing where I'm sailing, which is narrow channels out on the California Delta, you cannot leave the boat unattended, and you must be focused on what you're doing. And so all else escapes my mind. It just goes away, right? Mm-hmm. And so I have found in that experience that there is some value in the therapy. So we have translated that to the Sail to Recovery program. We take veterans out sailing, and it's non-clinical. So I'm not, I don't get them in the boat and go, hey, tell me about your mother or what happened in, when you were, deployed or things. We don't do that. We don't talk about that. I give them the opportunity to just mentally walk away from all of that and do something that's stressful, because you could wreck a boat, right? You can crash this thing, but in a safe environment, because if you do wreck it and you crash the boat, you're not on Gilligan's Island. You're not going to end up lost at sea. You know what I mean? So it's safe in that sense, but it's still challenging mentally because a lot going on, right? So I have discovered in that most of the guys that I do talk to, and clinicians that I talk to about this subject matter, is there is an adrenaline switch. And so regardless of where these guys and gals are deployed, and just to sidetrack here briefly, I have discovered recently that women in the military have largely different issues than the men.
Really?
And I discovered that by doing a complete women's only event with the sailing program. And it's completely different. And it's things that, again, we don't talk about because it's taboo. You don't talk about those things, right? Because it could be a black mark on the military, as an image, or it could be a black mark on the soldier. You're not tough enough. This is why women shouldn't be in the military. That kind of argument, right? My point being is that there's this adrenaline switch, and most guys that are deployed are in a very rigorous, you're up at this time, you go to bed at that time, you do A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's very rigorous. When you're deployed, you're always on alert. Even when you're off duty, you're always on alert, and it's go, 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 go. And when they come home, they don't have that. Okay, when they're reintroduced into civilian life, they don't have that anymore. So what do those guys end up doing? They end up sitting on the couch, doing nothing, right? They get a job, but who do you trust, right? When you've been in a theater of war where any particular civilian walking down a street could be the guy that has an RPG around the corner and it's going to blow you up, or it could be the guy that stashes a backpack on your commute, right? And you could die at any second. That looming in the back of your mind. There's this adrenaline runs consistently, right? When they come home, that switch is turned off. How do you live like that?
These are things that I have never even thought of, and bringing them. This is a real eye opener for me.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah. I hope it opens some other eyes.
Yeah. Being a military wife and widow, I mean, my husband wasn't in a war, but just being on alert and then coming home, or being deployed out and then coming home, there was always that. Got to give him a week to unwind. Mm-hmm. Don't stress him out, So I understand what you're saying, and we don't treat them with respect. We don't give them the help they need when they come back at all. I mean, I've seen it. We say, "Oh, you're a vet. We'll help you find a job, or we'll do this." And they don't. They don't get that job. Yeah. They don't get the help they need. So we need to fix that.
Yeah, it's a tough issue to solve, but we're not going to solve it by ignoring it. And,
no,
definitely.
They deserve so much more.
Well, it sounds like you have found your niche there for sure. I
we
really
appreciate it.
What you're doing with that group. I had no idea, Kevin. Nice.
I beg everybody listening to this, do some research, and the best research that you can do is to have a conversation with veterans.
Okay.
Ask them what they need. They will tell you. And let me tell you this: we do this a lot because it gratifies us to say thank you for your service. Right? Sometimes, and I've been told this. Sometimes those guys are tired of hearing that.
Yeah,
they've been thinking enough.
I often wondered that.
Yeah, they've been thinking enough. So maybe instead of rushing up for your own personal gratification to go, I shook a soldier's hand and thanked him for his service. I always do that every time. Never miss an opportunity. Right? Sometimes it's better to just go, "How you doing, man?"
Yeah,
what's going on?
That's good. That's good. Well, it took me a long time to be able to do that because I always felt so I felt it really hurt me. It to go up there and shake their hands. I would have to cry. It would make me cry to do that. So it took me a long time to start even doing that. So I hope you guys even know that I really mean it when I say that.
Yeah.
So
And
at least
everybody
this
should.
person.
And I'm not saying don't
Yeah.
appreciate and thank our
Yeah.
military, but I'm
True.
saying that it has become it's almost to the point of a cliche.
Yeah,
for
and I
some
can
of those
understand
Some of those
that.
guys.
And you know
yeah.
what? Some of
I can
those guys
understand
that are on the verge of walking to a bar with a gun and killing people, the last thing they want to hear is thank you for your service, because that is what brought them to this point.
Right.
So a
you're
better
right.
conversation with those folks is,
how you doing?
how you doing? Can I help you with something? You need to talk?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That's an excellent idea. I like, yeah, nice. Good. Thank you so much for bringing that to our attention. I am very I'm very pleased to know that now. And good. Well, Kevin, this is, I guess.
Have I thrown you off, Pat? You didn't expect to talk about that, did you?
I'm going to cry again.
It's one of many important issues to me.
It is another. And I ask you about the radio. That is like such a small question in comparison to what you are doing with your life.
You know,
And
I loved being on the radio. I think I said right from the very beginning, and I was reluctant to take that job because I knew I know what it is to be a public figure, and I had no intention of being a public figure. People still jokingly say that to me all the time. Oh, you're the celebrity. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm world famous locally, right? And I never thought of myself like that. I really just, I went into it to have an experience. I went into it to have fun. And I said right from the beginning, when this stops being fun, I'm going to stop doing this. And I was starting to approach that. And there were some challenges within the company. And let me preface that statement by saying it's a great company to work for. The folks that I worked with, tremendous. I will never forget the contributions that they made to me personally, right? And my personal growth, right? Mm-hmm. Just knowing them, I feel like I'm a better person, right? So it was a great experience, but I went into it knowing that if I was going to do that and have to talk about the hard subjects, and believe me, there were some times when my boss kicked in the door and said, stop saying such things. And mostly that was about police shootings and things like that, because, you know, you have to talk about things that make people angry, right? So I went into this knowing that if I've got to tackle these hard subjects, there are some things, some topics that I'm going to set aside, knowing that this is what I feel about my community, and this is going to be my contribution to my community. And I think that I tried to do that. I never once, and I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back, I never once charged anybody any money to do an MC gig. I never once charged anybody to do an appearance. If I thought it could bring other folks to a cause that I cared about, I would absolutely show up and do whatever it is folks needed me to do to get folks involved in community activities. And that's really the way I hope that people think that I approach that as a thing. And I'm not stopping.
Commendable.
I'm not stopping that. I mean, where I'm at now, which I'm very stoked to be at, and I never thought I would be. Once again, I'm having a great experience with awesome people around me. And I think for me, at least, if I go through life like that, just one experience after the other, and I'm going to get all hippie and philosophical on you, but if I go through life like that, then I'm going to learn things about not only the people around me, but I'm going to learn things about myself as well. It's important for me personally to have fulfillment in what I do. It's far more important than money. And if you listen to my show, God, you know how much I like money. But personal fulfillment is far more important to me, and being involved in my community gives me that personal fulfillment. So,
very commendable. Thank you so much for sharing that, Kevin. And we'd like to thank you for being behind the mic again tonight.
I appreciate it. You don't
we
know
really
how
appreciate
many
it.
times in the last
appreciate it.
4 or 5 months now that I've been like, oh, what I wish I had a microphone.
I have to tell you that watching you here, you were enjoying yourself immensely.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed talking with you immensely. Marie, I'm sure enjoyed it talking with you as immensely.
Marie and I are old friends. We shout at each other on Facebook all the time.
Yeah. I mean, I've known him since Dave Bowman's days. So, you know, it's always nice to run into Kevin and stuff. So.
Sure. Very good. Well, thanks again, Kevin, for being on again. We certainly appreciate you being on Jefferson Liberty Radio. Thank you. Okay, coming up on December 12th, the State of Jefferson meeting will be at 6:30 at Grizzly Rock Cafe. We'll have Jake Wanger, former MID board member and local farmer. He'll speak on the water issues. You won't want to miss that meeting.
Thank you, Pat. If you are interested in sponsoring our show, you can head over to jeffersonlibertyradio.com or email us at sponsors@jeffersonlibertyradio.com. We would love to hear from you. Our listeners, email us at feedback@jeffersonlibertyradio.com or via our website, again, at jeffersonlibertyradio.com. We'd love to hear your questions and comments. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes if you aren't already, or your podcast player of choice. Leave us a 5-star rating there. We would really appreciate it, and it does help our ratings a lot. You can find us on the typical social media, Facebook, Twitter. You can also find us on Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, and even alternative media such as BitChute or Gab. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and we'll catch you next time.